I found a cursed manuscript that revealed the dark fates of patriarchs in ancient Egypt. I never should have opened that door. It was just an old wooden door, creaking with age. But the moment I turned the handle, a cold draft rushed out, wrapping around me like icy fingers. My heart pounded as I stepped inside, the gloom swallowing me up like a thick fog. I was just looking for something interesting in my grandfather's dusty attic, but instead, I unearthed that horrible manuscript. The room was dark, cluttered with cobwebs and forgotten treasures. An old lamp flickered weakly in one corner, casting eerie shadows that danced across the walls. The air smelled stale, like something died a long time ago. I hesitated, but curiosity pulled me deeper. I shuffled over piles of old boxes, each step triggering whispers in my mind, urging me to leave, and then I saw it, the manuscript. Bound in tattered leather, it lay on a worn table. My eyes widened. Strange symbols covered the page's hieroglyphs that seemed to flicker and writhe under my gaze. I reached out, fingertips trembling as I traced the lines, feeling a surge of energy hum against my skin. It was as if the ancient words were alive. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from behind me. I jumped, whirling around. Nothing. Just darkness. I took a breath, but the air felt heavy, pressing against my chest. A cold sweat dripped down my back. I turned back to the manuscript, and that's when I noticed that the words were shifting. They weren't just symbols, they were tales of forgotten kings, their gruesome fates unfolding before my eyes: betrayal, madness, curses. Each story darker than the last tugged at my insides. Then, I heard it soft, almost imperceptible, like a whisper right next to my ear. "Leave," it urged. My skin crawled. Someone was here with me. Panic washed over me, and I stumbled backward. Shadows twisted in the corners of the room, encroaching on my space, thick like fog. The voices grew louder, a cacophony of warnings, lamenting lost souls trapped in that cursed tome. That I grabbed the manuscript, desperate to get out. My fingers brushed against the pages, and in that instant, the whisper turned into a scream. A figure materialized in the corner of my vision, tall, dark, and menacing. My breath hitched, I couldn't move. The manuscript slipped from my grasp, falling open on the floor, pages flapping like frantic wings. Then the door slammed shut behind me. The room plunged into an unnatural silence. My heart raced, pounding against my ribs like a wild animal trying to escape. I was trapped. I couldn't take my eyes off that dark figure, slowly stepping closer. I was frozen, panic boiling in my veins. "Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The figure lurked just beyond the reach of the feeble light, shrouded in shadows that gleamed like liquid darkness. A whisper echoed through the attic, its cadence punctuated by an icy chill. "You awakened us," it hissed, the sound wrapping around my lungs, tightening until I could barely breathe. My gaze flicked to the manuscript on the floor, the pages flapping wildly as if caught in an unseen wind. Each word I had read pulled threads of my soul, intertwining my fate with that of the ancient kings and their curses. Panic surged within me, spurring my feet to move, but they felt like anchors, rooted in place by the sheer dread of the presence that loomed closer. Then it spoke again, its voice a blend of silk and rusted iron. "Did you think you could claim that which was never yours? You're not the first nor the last to try." With each word, a wave of anguish rippled through the air, and I felt my heart beat faster in my chest, as if responding to the agonies of those long buried. This was not just a room, it was a chamber of torment, an echo of those who had come before me. Each scrap of dust swirling in the dim light carried a whisper, memories entwined with grief and madness. I could feel the walls closing in, the insistent pressure of something ancient and tormented bearing down on me. "Leave," the whispers beckoned again, but this time, they were laced with a sense of desperation and despair. Suddenly, the floorboard creaked beneath my feet, a sound that scraped against the silence like a knife pressed to skin. The figure paused, tilting its head as if contemplating my feeble attempts to flee. I was suffocating in the weight of its gaze, hollow yet simultaneously full of rage and sorrow. Desperate, I lunged for the manuscript. My fingers skimmed the leather cover, and for a moment, a surge of warmth flowed through me, as if I had reconnected with something primal. The warmth flickered, quickly overcome by a rush of freezing cold that snatched my breath. I felt a sharp tug in my chest, a piercing desire to understand what lay within those cursed pages, but an overwhelming sense of dread warned me of the dire consequences. "Your curiosity will be your undoing," the figure growled, its form beginning to shift, unraveling like a misted shadow. It raised a hand, fingers extending like gnarled branches of a dying tree, the very essence of despair radiating from its presence. I felt the room spin, the shadows grasping at me with claw-like fingers, as if the very walls sought to wrap me in a tomb of their making. The manuscript slipped from my grasp again, sprawling open on the floor. I caught a glimpse of a new tale depicted there, an image forming of a dark king, surrounded by his loyal subjects, faces twisted in fear and devotion. Their eyes were hollow, voids of nothingness staring back at me, pleading yet warning all at once. Before I could comprehend the significance, the figure lunged, adrenaline surged through me, I clambered back, my body moving on instinct. But the room pulsed with an energy that compelled me to look back at the manuscript, the Dark King's face morphing in agony, twisting into the silhouette of my own. My breath caught in my throat, a choked gasp that rang hollow in the abyss of silence surrounding me. Just then, a new sound joined the fray, a low growl, rumbling from the depths of the shadows at the far corner of the room. I turned to see figures emerging, outlines shrouded in dread, dragging something behind them. The darkness hissed as they advanced, and panic surged like fire in my veins. "I see you found my family," the dark figure whispered, its features shifting ominously as it stepped into the flickering light, no longer mere shadow, but a face twisted with betrayal and eldritch hunger. "Now you shall join them." As the shadows closed in, I felt a rush of cold air behind me. The door I had thought sealed was creaking open slowly, revealing an endless hallway of darkness beyond, the unknown calling with its sinister song. The pull to flee and to understand twisted violently within me. Shadows coiled like serpents awaiting their feast, and the last remnants of light flickered out that I turned, feeling the full weight of history pressing down, the echoes of countless souls reaching out, urging me either to escape or to embrace the curse. As the figures surged forward, their eyes glinting with the hunger of the eternally lost, I was left facing a choice, to confront the horrors before me or to flee into the abyss that awaited beyond the door, and in that moment of indecision, the ground beneath me trembled violently, splitting the air with a cacophony of screams. The ones who had come before were rising, dragging their cursed fates with them. All I could do was scream. The sound of my scream echoed back at me, distorted and cruel, swallowed by the darkened corners of the attic. The air grew heavier, like a fog settling on my chest, suffocating, as shadows writhed closer. The figures, remnants of the wretched souls trapped between the past and present, grew in number, their eyes glinting like embers in a forgotten fire. As their grotesque forms shuffled forward, I caught glimpses of the horrors that forged them. One figure wore a crown of cracked bone, its mouth twisted into a mournful wail as if torn from an ancient lament. Another dragged chains made of raw despair. Each one was a prisoner of their own making, shackled to the sins of ages long past, yet their gazes fixated on me, as if sensing the same fate lay in wait that I. In a frenzied attempt to escape, I glanced at the open manuscript. Words swirled before my eyes, igniting memories of the warning, "Those who awaken the past shall become part of it." I had unleashed something far more sinister than I could comprehend. The manuscript was no mere book, it was a portal to darkness, an artifact woven from suffering. "Emerge, and we shall feast together," one of the figures croaked, the sound reverberating like the rustling of dead leaves. The laughter that followed was hollow, echoing in the recesses of my mind, a promise of torment rather than joy. Heart racing, I dashed toward the open door, the promise of an escape looming just beyond. Just as I reached it, I felt an icy grip on my shoulder. The cold radiated through me, paralyzing my resolve while a surge of despair filled the air, thick and tangible. Somewhere in the back of my mind, I heard the whispers urging me to succumb, plead for forgiveness, embrace the agony of those who wandered through this hellish limbo. As I wrenched myself free, I barged into the hallway only to find it stretching endlessly, a yawning chasm of darkness that threatened to swallow me whole. Light ebbed behind me, the attic now an echoing chamber of despair. I stumbled forward, each step deeper into the unknown, but the grip of those shadows clawed at my heels. Suddenly, a violent tremor rippled through the ground. Pictures tore themselves from the walls, swirling in a tempest of memory, ancient pharaohs, their eyes pleading for release, faces scarred by betrayal and despair. They flickered before me like echoes of a forgotten dream, a warning flashing through my mind, telling me to turn back, but behind, the figure loomed larger, its hand extending into twisted shadows, stretching impossibly long, gnarled fingers flexing with malicious intent. "You will find no solace in the hallway of your escape," it hissed, the voice deep and taunting, wrapping around me like a noose. "Join us instead." Just when I thought I might be trapped between two states of horror, the enveloping darkness of the unknown ahead and the raw anguish of those behind, I froze, the floor beneath me offering monumental resistance. The shadows locked eyes with me, their intentions clear, they were hungry for a soul to claim, and I was all but bait. Their mouths twisted into deranged smiles as they echoed my earlier words, "Curiosity will be your undoing." I felt an undeniable force pulling me back, the manuscript's pages beginning to flutter anew, revealing desperate details of sacrifices offered by generations who had believed they could rewrite their fates. The names of the long-dead patriarchs glared back at me, black ink dancing with the cadence of a heartbeat, and I realized that each name was a tribute, a sacrifice to the darkness that would one day reclaim me. Terror seeped into my bones. The door rattled violently now, an unpredictable tempest caught between the dimensional rift created by the manuscript. I could either confront the spirits that sought to feed on my soul or plunge deeper into the maw of nightmarish uncertainty. Then, just as I felt the shadow's fingers curling around my neck, a deafening crack split the air, rupturing the silence with a scream of its own. The walls of the hallway began to collapse inward, drawing both light and dark together in a spiral of destruction. The shadowed figures stuttered, momentarily disoriented by the shifting reality, giving me my chance to break free, but before I could move, a new sound resonated behind me, a child's laughter, soft yet sinister, echoing against the chaos. It twisted through the darkness like a thread, pulling taut until every shadow, every wretched form turned to face the source, and then I saw her, a little girl with hollow eyes full of shadows, standing at the edge of the attic, beckoning me with a delicate finger. Her smile bloomed like a flower in the depths of despair, innocent yet hauntingly familiar. "Come back," she whispered sweetly, "you belong with us." Time halted as the world crumbled around me. The choice had never felt heavier, to flee toward the fading light of uncertainty or to surrender to the darkness where I had already begun to belong. The walls trembled, and in the whirlwind of fate about to unfold, I could only whisper, "No," and then, the ground beneath me split open, revealing a gaping maw of swirling shadows. I was falling. As I plummeted into the abyss, time stretched, twisting around me like a serpent constricting its prey. The shadows enveloped me, and a cold wind roared past, carrying the echoes of desolate whispers, lamenting souls that had long since succumbed to despair. I squeezed my eyes shut, terrified that if I caught sight of the visions that danced through the void, I too would fall victim to their dark allure. Falling felt eternal, a descent into history's regrets, until my body was jolted by the hard floor, a surface that fired electric tendrils of pain through me. The scream that had been building burst forth, but the sound echoed into nothingness, swallowed by the oppressive silence that settled around me. As I lay still, grappling with the remnants of fear, I blinked against the dim light that flickered above a lone bulb dangling from the ceiling, casting grotesque shadows on the peeling walls. I was no longer in the attic but in an unfamiliar room, one laden with the weight of centuries. The atmosphere reeked of decay, mingled with something sharper, more metallic. Tentatively, I lifted my head. The furniture was draped in sheets stained with time, and a towering bookshelf stretched across the room, filled with tomes that whispered as I approached. The air shimmered and felt alive, vibrating with unspeakable knowledge, a history begging to be heard. My fingertips grazed the spines, and a shiver ran down my spine as familiar glyphs stared back at me, symbols reminiscent of the manuscript I had desecrated. Drawn in by an unseen force, I traced the fragile outlines of the covers with trembling hands, feeling the energy pulsate beneath my skin, dancing with the rhythm of a heartbeat. Just as I turned to flee, the shelf trembled, and books began to slide, leaving a disarray of chaos. In their midst, one volume caught my attention before it settled heavily to the floor, a ledger, meticulously inscribed with the names of the cursed, detailing their betrayals and dark pacts woven with the spirits of the ancient. The names were familiar. With shaking breath, I recognized both the historical figures and the bitter sins attributed to them, a pharaoh wielding dreams of immortality, a rebel seeking vengeance, all condemned to walk this earth in shades of grief. Among them, my own name flickered like firelight, inscribed in crimson ink that bled like a fresh wound. No, I gasped, stepping back, but the shadows around me began to shift, coalescing into forms that represented the very darkness I had dared to disturb. Their eyes, black pools of despair, focused unrelentingly on me, an audience eager for retribution. "You were already marked when you chose to awaken the past," one hissed, a figure materializing from the shadows like a moth drawn to a flame. Its face was both familiar and terrifying, its mouth contorting into a grin that dripped with malice. "Your curiosity is not just a sin, but a ticket to your reckoning." Desperately, I stepped over the fallen books, trying to orient myself in this twisted library of regret. Curiosity begged me to delve deeper, seeking answers to unanswerable questions, yet the looming entities around me betrayed my instincts. They were never meant to grant knowledge, they craved something far more primal, my very essence. The room began to pulse with sound, an orchestra of anguished cries that rose and fell with an intensity that threatened to engulf me. I spun on my heel to the door I had come through, but to my horror, it had morphed into a wall of roiling shadows, a sentient barrier that drew power from my fear. In that moment, I understood there was no escape. A glimmer of resolve flickered within me, reminding me that I wasn't alone in this cursed labyrinth. I recalled the little girl's hollow, beckoning gaze, her insidious invitation woven with familiarity. "You belong with us," her voice haunted my thoughts, a promise covered in darkness. Suddenly, a crack pierced the air, reverberating through the ground beneath me. The shadows jerked like marionettes, thrown into disarray by an unseen force. My heart raced. Sensing the shift, as someone or something broke through the veil separating dimensions. The ceiling collapsed in a shower of dust and fragments of forgotten memories, blurring my vision with shadows that beckoned like sirens. Then, a figure emerged from the chaos, a silhouette sliced against the whirl of shadow. With every heartbeat, it took form, an image of a tall man adorned in the garb of ages past, eyes burning with desperate recognition as the winds howled around him. "You shouldn't have come here," he shouted, his voice resonating with an ancient power that begged for escape. A chill coursed through me as realization bloomed like a dark flower. I knew him, the Patriarch without a name, the one who had gazed unflinchingly into the pit of eternity. In that moment, the boundaries of existence crumbled, and I understood that our fates were intertwined, tightly bound to the manuscript I had unleashed. Before I could ask him what he meant, a deafening roar reverberated through the space, collapsing the ground once more. The room began to quake, the shadows desperate to reclaim what was theirs, and the walls swelled as if alive with the hunger of imprisoned souls. That I was caught between the impending doom of the shadows and the chaotic resurgence of the Patriarch, and in that pivotal moment, we locked eyes. His expression betrayed a binding truth, a harrowing realization that something deeper loomed hidden in the darkness. Just as the room began to fracture, revealing the maw of shadow below, he reached out toward me, a hand extended with the desperation of one who sought to save but also to imprison. "Embrace the truth now, or lose everything." And then, as the shadows surged, their teeth bared and hungry for my soul, the world collapsed around me into utter darkness, leaving only the haunting echo of the Patriarch's warning lingering in the air. And I fell once more, not into emptiness, but into the heart of the impending revelation. As I plunged into the dark currents of nothingness, the air thickened around me, wrapping me in an icy grasp that stung like a million needles. I felt weightless, lost to the world I knew, but deep down, something primal roared to life, awakening every sense, every instinct long buried beneath the surface of my mind. The dark abyss was both a void and a living entity, shifting and swirling with its own sentient intent, and I was no longer merely falling, I was being drawn deeper into its embrace. Just as I thought my body would dissolve into the myriad of shadows, a jolt sent me crashing onto a surface that felt nestlessly uneven, like lying atop the grave of something unspeakable. I coughed, the taste of iron filling my mouth, and as I struggled to steady my breathing, I instinctively placed my palms against the cold ground. It was then that I felt a tremors coursing through the floor, an echo of something ancient, something restless beneath me. With a gasp, I pushed myself onto my feet, my heart racing. Instinct urged me to run, but the shadows loomed, a tapestry of darkness that twisted on every side, undulating as if they were alive. My surroundings began to clarify. I stood in what appeared to be an underground chamber built of stone, the walls intricately adorned with carvings depicting grotesque forms in the throes of torment, lost to age and despair. Dimly lit torches flickered along the edges, casting flickering shadows that seemed to whisper words of caution. "Your curiosity brings more than just knowledge," a whisper curled around me, low and knowing. I turned abruptly, heart pounding, the source of the voice hiding in the shadows at the periphery of my vision. "You tread where few dare, awakening what was meant to lie buried. Who are you?" I called out, my voice trembling in the silence that followed. The response was a low, guttural laugh that resonated within the stone, vibrating through my bones and sending an electric tingle of fear cascading down my spine. The laughter morphed into sobs, and with it came an oppressive heaviness that nearly knocked me off my feet. I stumbled back, nearly bolting, but something kept me rooted. It was a call from within. Those dark tendrils of familiar longing floated through my veins, urging me to listen closer. "Here lies the truth." The figure emerged, a spectre clad in ragged garments reminiscent of ancient priestly robes, their features shrouded yet familiar, a face lined with suffering, its eyes filled with countless stories of despair as they locked onto mine. "You summoned us, and now the circle is complete, little seeker of knowledge. You are merely a pawn." With each word, the shadows around me thickened, swirling like a tempest, each shade pulling me closer to their seductive undertow. I could feel their collective sorrow, their despair weaving through the very air, burdening it with their endless lamentations. That I took a step back. "I didn't mean to, did you not? Did you not call us with your reckless inquiry? With your insatiable curiosity?" The voice crescendoed, rising to a maddening pitch that filled the chamber with despair, echoed by the tortured wails of those trapped between worlds. The walls vibrated, crumbling further as if the very foundation of this place felt threatened. That I grasped at desperation. "What do you want from me?" "To share the burden of knowledge you so foolishly sought. To bear witness to the tales of our fates intertwined, the price of your ignorance." The figure stretched its emaciated arms wide, and a crack splintered across the ceiling, revealing hints of creeping shadows writhing above, glimmering like stars swallowed by ancient malevolence. Suddenly, another voice broke through, deeper, resonating like a thunderclap that reverberated against the stones. "That is not all they want, seeker. They desire more than your attention, they thirst for your soul." The figure of the Patriarch emerged from the whirlwind of shadows, muscles tense, eyes alight with a desperate fire as he stepped into my line of sight, his presence a stark contrast to the surrounding sorrow. "Enter into this pact willingly," he said, reaching out a hand as if to shield me from the impending doom. "Only then will you gain a glimpse of the truth that awaits below." But as he spoke, the shadows writhed even more furiously, flooding the chamber, filling my lungs with a deep-seated terror. Each creature born from darkness looked upon me with unquenchable hunger. It was as if they were a tapestry of souls battered down by the weight of their own failures, released from their torment to reclaim what they believed belonged to them. That I was caught in the maelstrom of fear, uncertainty, and a sickly yearning buried deep within me. And as I glanced from the Patriarch to the swirling shadows, my heart thundered in my chest. One path led toward salvation, while the other clamored for my decay. Without warning, a blinding light shot forth from the shadows, illuminating everything in its path, and I was encased in brilliance, disorienting my very essence, and for a split second, I understood. The histories embedded in the stone began to unravel before my eyes, the shadows revealing fleeting glimpses of their buried regrets, a replay of events long forgotten yet unforgotten, a shared echo of despair. With the world splitting apart around me, the choice muscled its way to the forefront, seek the truth, no matter the cost, or succumb to the shadows that hungered for my surrender. And then, as if echoing my own silent scream, a shadow moved closer, inching toward my core, the very essence of what I had woken. Make your choice, seeker, the voice of the spectre curled around me, pleading and malicious, engulfing me in a shroud of impossibility. The Patriarch's hand hovered between the figures, a desperate offer against the swirling chaos. As the walls began to buckle, my heart raced, uncertainty pounding like thunder in my ears, and I felt the ground tremble beneath me as the shadows surged forth, forgetting their chains. Will you embrace the truth, or will you fall into oblivion? What will decide your fate? And then, the ground gave way beneath me in a tumultuous crash, a threshold to madness reached, a heart-stopping plunge into the darkness beckoning from below. Just before I fell into the consuming void, I heard the echo of their cries, anguished, confused, and terrifyingly hopeful, as if the answer to my fate lay in the shadows that had craved me all along. As I plunged through the abyss, every moment felt stretched, extending into an eternity of unknowing. The screams faded into silence, but their echoes carved paths in my mind, a distortion of time, a blurring of reality. I landed on soft ground, which was startling, almost comforting, but the air remained chilled and heavy, filled with an unshakable foreboding. I found myself in a tangled forest of twisted trees, their bark black as coal and gnarled like the fingers of the damned reaching out to snatch me back. Hovering at the edges of my vision were glimmers of movement, shadows flitting between trunks, whispering secrets in a language that coiled around my mind like smoke. I stood frozen, the weight of the unknown pressing upon my chest. A soft rustle came from my left. I turned, heartbeat deafeningly loud, but nothing materialized from the darkness. Is anyone there? I called, my voice swallowed by the thick atmosphere of dread. The low murmur returned, a cacophony of ghostly sighs, like long-buried secrets cracking the surface of their graves. Without waiting for a reply, I began to move through the thicket, dread curling around my spine like a serpent. Each step was a question unasked, a blend of desperation and curiosity. I needed to understand where I was and why the shadows had beckoned me here. My feet crunched against brittle leaves, and with each sound, the forest seemed to draw closer, closing in on me, and then I saw it, a flicker of light barely visible through the dense undergrowth. I pushed through, heart pounding from both fear and the thrill of discovery. As I made my way through the last cluster of brambles, I stumbled into a clearing bathed in an otherworldly glow, where shadows danced like playful spirits. In the center stood an ancient altar, worn but majestic, with motifs covering its surface depicting monstrous entities. They twisted and curled, capturing a story desperate for rebirth. Above the altar, the sky twisted into strange patterns, deep hues swirling ominously, as though time itself was unraveling. Something about the altar pulled me closer, an inexplicable force, a magnetic hunger that whispered intoxicating promises. I reached out with trembling fingers, caressing the cold surface, and the moment skin met stone, the air shimmered with a pulse that resonated deep within my core. You wish to know their fates? The voice seeped through the air like a thick fog, curling around my consciousness, seductive and dreadful. Each soul is a lesson, a story written in blood and despair. The chronicles of those who walked before you are etched here for eternity. The halo of light surrounding the altar shifted, and I caught glimpses, torrents of images cascading over one another. Faces emerged, twisted in agony, eyes wide with recognition as they gestured toward me, mouths moving in mournful silence. I stumbled back, the weight of their collective sorrow crashing down upon me like a storm. Must you keep your eyes shut? The voice urged, deeper now, melding with the rustle of the trees. Open yourself to the truth, seeker. Embrace their despair, and you shall see what you truly desire. Stop! I shouted, yet the words felt weak against the rising tide of darkness. As if in response, shadows lunged from the edges of the clearing, tendrils of pure malevolence eager to ensnare me. Panic surged within me. I turned to flee, but the forest had shifted, the paths closed off, leaving me ensnared by the encroaching darkness. You cannot escape what you have awakened. Shadows swirled closer, cold fingers brushing against my skin, clawing at my sanity. I felt their hunger and insatiable need, a yearning for the whispers of life I possessed. They wanted the warmth of my essence, the very pulse of hope clinging to my fragile spirit. Terror churned in my stomach, I clawed at the air, desperate to find an exit. But as I stumbled to the altar, the ancient stone erupted with a surge of light. Shadows twisted violently in response, howling in fury, and a crack echoed from the heavens. Remember their fates. Let their knowledge guide you, or join them for eternity. The altar shook with a deafening roar, shadows darting towards me with renewed vigor, hunger blaring like a siren. Just as darkness was about to envelop me completely, the ground split open with a force that felt like judgment, a blinding light beckoning me toward the void. I was suspended between realms, a heart-stopping choice teetering on the edge of chaos. Ahead lay the light, promising understanding, while behind me, the shadows writhed, whispering for my surrender, every creature begging me to join their wretched chorus. And in that moment, I felt a hand grasp my arm, a familiar touch, anchoring me in an instant, but when I turned to see who it was, I confronted a face I had not seen in years, twisted by sorrow and decay, a warning reflected in hollows of despair. You cannot trust them. Don't. And then the ground beneath me cracked wider, swallowing her screams whole as an engulfing darkness surged forth, eager to claim me as its own. I was thrust into the air, weightless in the throes of that relentless darkness. A scream clawed at my throat, yearning for release, but was stifled by the rapid beat of my heart, the cacophony of voices rising around me. The fabric of reality twisted and shifted, threatening to shred as I spiraled downward once more, not into emptiness, but into another world altogether, one that felt poised on the brink of madness. The transition was jarring, like being wrenched from a nightmare into a waking horror. I landed on a sun-baked surface, grains of sand storming up around me. My breath came in quick gasps as I pushed myself upright and surveyed the scene unfolding before me. Towering stone monuments rose around me, each engraved with hieroglyphs that seemed to pulse with an unearthly light, as if imbued with the very essence of life itself. Dark clouds swirled ominously above, conveying a message that echoed in the depths of my mind: you are not alone. I staggered to my feet, sand sticking to my clammy skin. The air was thick with an intangible dread, each exhalation condensed into a mist that clung to my lips. As I stepped forward, I noticed shadows coiling around the monuments, figures emerging from the dark veil, swirling in unseen currents. Their bodies twisted unnaturally, distorted versions of humanity, enshrined in grotesque postures. They hissed and murmured into one another, darting glances that seemed to pierce right through me, measuring my worth or my impending doom. A memory flickered in my mind, a warning shared through desperate glances and hushed breaths: beware of the ones who linger in the shadows. They tell tales much darker than the midnight sky, it echoed, leaving chills that crawled along my spine. One figure, taller than the rest, stepped forward, shrouded in an ethereal darkness that seemed to consume the light around it. Its eyes glinted like shards of obsidian, and when it opened its mouth, voices poured forth an ancient chord of sorrow entwined with anger and despair. Are you a seeker or a victim? Have you come to unlock the whispered secrets of these proud towers? Its voice twisted through my mind, weaving insecurities with curiosity. I hesitated, caught between my desire to uncover the truth and the foreboding that wrapped around me like a serpent. I want to know, I breathed, despite every reflex telling me to recoil from those cursed words. Laughter erupted around me, but not the mirthful kind. It was twisted, full of malice. Very well, seeker, let the trial of souls commence. Welcome to the temple of lost fates, where the past is alive, and the future bleeds. Before I could react, the ground trembled as if the very earth longed for a release, and a hidden chamber opened beneath my feet. The abyss revealed a staircase spiraling down into the blackened void of the temple's heart. The shadows surged forward, pushing me toward that yawning maw of despair. I edged closer, the air thundering with vibrations that spoke of unearthed horrors. Undaunted, I began my descent, the passage narrowing as I plunged deeper into the earth. Each step weighed against the knowledge I craved, the stories buried within the stone. Echoes of the past echoed in reply, a chorus of lamentations thrumming through the walls. Each utterance was like a drop of molten fear, pooling at the base of my soul, and then silence, an oppressive hush deprived of sound. The air grew dense and suffocating, as though an unseen force was watching, its breath heavy with a sinister intrigue. I reached the bottom and found myself in a vast cavern, illuminated by the shimmering reflections of countless fractured gems embedded in the walls. Millions of trapped souls seemed to swirl through the crystals, their faces contorted in unending torment. Seek what you desire, but beware. The higher shadowed figure loomed before me, its presence expanding, tendrils of darkness slithering across the ground. For knowledge comes at a price, and what you find may sever the strings tethering you to this realm. Before I could process its warning, figures began to form. In the reflection of the crystal walls, specters of lost patriarchs, their stories unwillingly etched into their visages. They looked back at me with pleading eyes, memories bleeding into my mind, overwhelming emotions crashing like waves. Release us. They wailed, their voices punctured by an all-consuming dread. Unravel what binds us. But know this truth: the threads of fate are tangled and treacherous. I felt my life pulse through me, threads of my own story intermingling with theirs. A surge of panic filled the cavern. I grasped a gem, a shimmering eye that promised insight, but the moment my fingers touched it, a scream erupted from the shadows, sending tendrils racing toward me, eager to extract their toll. Once you see, you cannot unsee. The whisperer raged, and with that, the walls began to pulsate, resonating with the very heartbeat of terror itself, drawing nearer, ready to engulf me whole. As the shadows lunged, their grasp ready to ensnare my essence, a deafening crack echoed through the cavern, shattering the stillness. The ceiling rumbled and fragments of stone began to plummet around me. I was caught in a maelstrom, darkness closing in, the harrowing choice of ignition or oblivion closing fast, with uncertainty engulfing my sense of self. The cavern shook violently, and in that singular moment before impact, I glimpsed the shadows retreating, revealing a path that led further into the heart of chaos. A shimmering portal beckoned from unseen depths. And I was left standing at the crossroads of time, my heart thumping in my chest, a scream boiling on my lips, knowing that whatever choice I made, I would never be the same again. A deafening roar consumed the cavern as the earth convulsed around me, and the shadows writhed in an ecstatic frenzy. I was no longer merely an observer, I was an unwilling participant in a sinister dance where the boundaries of life and death blurred uneasily. The cold light of the shimmering portal drew me closer, vibrating with the frantic energy of lost souls yearning for release. But doubt gripped my heart like icy tendrils. What awaited me beyond that spectral threshold? The choice is yours, seeker. Echoed the deep voice from the shadow, now a chorus of whispers blending with the stifling air. Step through and embrace the truth, or linger here and face the agony of their despair. My pulse quickened as I took a hesitant step toward the portal, its light pulsating in sync with my heartbeat. Desperation coiled around me like a serpent, whispering promises of revelations and answers, while the cries of the trapped souls surged, more fervent with each passing moment. They clawed at my consciousness, threads of their stories intertwining with impulses of self-preservation. You must decide. The shadows continued, weaving their magic into every word. What price are you willing to pay? Just as I ventured closer, a piercing scream erupted from the depths of the quarry, a voice that resonated deep in my bones. I recognized it, hauntingly familiar, entwined with the memories I had desperately tried to suppress. My sister, Maya. The echoes of her laughter danced in my mind like an ethereal melody, now twisted and warped by anguish. Her voice, fragile yet fierce, poured over and through the cavern like a torrential storm. You can't let them win. Run. You must run, darling. To hear her again was both a blessing and a curse, a weapon forged from love, cutting deeply through the layers of my fear. The cavern's oppressive silence shattered, and rhythmical thuds reverberated against the stone, approaching swiftly from the dark corners of the chamber. I whirled around to see a multitude of shadowy figures surging toward me, faces contorted with a chaotic blend of rage and sorrow. The air thickened around them, a rotten miasma beckoning me to retreat. You stand as a bridge between the living and the lost. A voice bellowed, an unseen mouth stretching wide, looming over me. Keep the offerings. Reject the past. Embrace your destiny. Sweat beaded on my brow as I was torn from the reverie of memories, drawn back to the imminent threat. I clasped my hands over my ears, trying to block out the wailing souls, desperate to escape their grasp. The earth beneath shifted, agitated and restless. I had ventured deeper into a realm crafted from despair and riddled with treachery, the shadows crawling closer with every heartbeat that I in a moment of clarity, I recalled the gem I had grasped, the stolen insight bubbling just beneath my consciousness. Release us. The patriarchs cried again, more urgently now, their voices forming a chilling chorus. To know is to suffer, but to believe in untruths is worse. Do you wish to carry our burden? To unveil our fates? I felt the weight of their pleas curling around me, tightening like a noose. My heart raced wildly, I hesitated, torn between truth and safety. If I dared to tread any further, stepping into the portal might relinquish what tether I had to my own reality. Yet leaving the cries of the past unanswered struck fear in my heart. You will be lost forever. Maya's voice echoed again, distant but undeniable. The shadows beckoned me to claim my power, to enter that flickering portal while time fragmented around me. My sister's words felt like an anchor, keeping me bound to the world I once knew. The thuds echoed closer, and I had only moments left to act. Would I seek the cursed knowledge waiting for me on the other side, or risk everything to find her, to maybe bring back those lost, the forsaken threads that were unduly severed? Your fate is a tapestry, seeker. The voice of shadows rumbled ominously. Choose wisely, for the paths are as twisted as the revelations you will uncover. The chamber trembled further, dust cascading from the ceiling as chunks of stone fell all around me like hail on a stormy night. The shrieks intensified, desperation morphing into a palpable energy that made the very stones quiver. I turned back to the shimmering portal, the calling growing louder, my thoughts spiraling even as dread wrapped around me like a cold blanket that I saw within that rift glimpses of lives unlived, horrors yet unseen, threads of fate intertwining into a tapestry of the damned. I took a step towards it, forced to make a decision still shrouded in uncertainty, a decision that pulled at the seams of my very identity. Just then, an explosion of darkness erupted above me, the cavern itself roaring with fury as a monstrous figure broke through. A massive, shadowed creature merged from the void, its eyes blazing with an unholy fire, and from its mouth emerged a cacophony of the anguished voices. You are ours. It bellowed, venomous, as the shadows released their hold on me, plunging me into the freezing abyss of the void. My pulse quickened in fear as I spiraled away from everything I loved, the cavern collapsing into chaos, the portal flickering dangerously behind me. I wasn't sure where I would land, but as darkness consumed me, a singular thought lanced through my mind: the price for knowledge had never been so steep, and the revelation of truths could very well lead to my downfall, and in that overwhelming darkness, all I could sense was the certainty that my choice had sealed my fate. As I plummeted into the void, time twisted and morphed around me like a fraying thread, unraveling my sense of self. An oppressive silence enveloped me, but beneath that stillness lurked an insidious whispering, a constant murmuring of lost souls, no, not lost, imprisoned, longing to escape. I grasped at my memories, fighting to hold on to who I was, who I wanted to be. Suddenly, I was jerked out of the intangible darkness, and with a sickening thud, I collided with an unseen surface. The ground beneath me felt cool and damp, like the stone floor of an ancient tomb, and the acrid scent of decay hung heavy in the air. Grappling with the disorientation, I pushed myself up from the ground, hands trembling as I took stock of my surroundings. Dim light flickered in the distance, revealing twisted shadows, contorted forms caught between dimensions. I squinted through the haze, straining to comprehend what I saw: a series of grotesque sculptures that seemed to pulse with a life of their own, figures enshrined in expressions of exquisite torment, their mouths frozen in cries that could not escape. Welcome, seeker, a voice hissed, slithering through the air like smoke. I turned, heart pounding, to find myself face to face with a tall figure draped in ragged cloaks that shifted like the shadows around them. The figure stepped closer, revealing a face adorned with the markings of ancient punishments, tribal tattoos of despair and darkness etched deep into their skin. You have stepped beyond the veil, yet you still cling to hope, they laughed softly, a sound like breaking glass, but here, hope is a cruel joke, and despair is a currency you cannot avoid. I retched at the hideous mockery of life that surrounded me. Words broke loose from my throat, spilling, "Where am I? How can I leave? I must find my sister." Pangs of fear surged through my chest as I thought of Maya, her voice echoing in my mind, a beacon of warmth in a quickly closing world of endless shadows. Chuckling darkly, the cloaked figure extended a hand that shimmered unnaturally, an inviting trap that seemed to draw my gaze. "If you seek your sister, you must first confront her truth. The answers lie within these walls, layered in the suffering of the past. But be warned, the revelations may shatter what you think you know." I hesitated, every instinct screaming at me to flee, to push through the oppressive air of this nightmare, yet something within me ached for the knowledge the figure hinted at. In that crucial moment, the ground trembled again, reverberating like the pulse of a heartbeat, and the sculptures around us twisted, their faces contorting, as if tumbling through the tapestry of time. A low growl emanated from the shadows behind the figure, a hint of a darker presence lurking, one that watched with gluttonous hunger. I caught a glimpse of glimmering eyes, numerous and unblinking. Instinctively, I shuddered. "Seek your answers," the figure pressed on, their voice now laced with urgency. "But know this, not all truths are meant to be unveiled. The cost may exceed your wildest nightmares. Your sister's fate intertwines with these echoes." Before I could gather my thoughts, a spectral scream echoed through the chamber, crystalline and full of anguish as the air thickened with palpable dread. It rattled my bones, nausea surging, and I turned, only to find myself staring into the wide eyes of one of the tormented sculptures. Their mouth moved in silent desperation, stretching painfully, as if trying to convey a warning, a frantic plea for mercy. The growl grew louder, the shadows gathering. I could sense the walls closing in, the darkness tightening its grip. "Time is not on your side," the cloaked figure said, gesturing toward a fractured wall obscured by crawling vines draped with glimmering chains forged from night. "Beyond that passage lies the truth you seek, but others might also seek to claim you." Terror surged like ice through my veins as I peered into the obscured passage. The weight of 1,000 fears pressed upon my chest. But Maya's face flashed. Before my eyes, her laughter now a haunting melody intertwined with sorrow. With no time to think, I raced toward the passage, heart hammering, feeling the shadows claw at my back, hungry and relentless. The specter clamored in my mind, bottomless dread threatening to overtake me as I dashed through the narrow opening that I fell through, into a space flooded with whispers of betrayal and sorrow. The chamber within was gigantic, a cosmic void punctuated by spectral forms weaving together a horrifying tapestry of events long forgotten. As I stepped into this sinister expanse, visions flashed before me, fragments of horror and revelation congealed into a pulsating mass, showing the untold fates of those who suffered before me. My sister, trapped in a loop of anguish, reaching for me, a tear sliding down her cheek. I inhaled sharply as the shadows surged, vibrant and wild, voices chanting, echoing warnings of dire consequences. "Turn back." They shrieked, a cacophony mingled with the laughter of the shadows, echoing insidiously in every corner of the chamber, but as I dared to reach for Maya lurking within the folds of the tumult, darkness roared, and the cult of shadows coalesced, a multitude descending upon me, enveloping me in their cold embrace. "You will learn the truth, seeker." They howled, pulling me down into depths unknown where even the light could not reach. And in that darkness, with a fresh wave of horror crashing over me, all I could do was scream as my sister's anguished plea grew fainter, swallowed by the endless night. I woke up gasping, the air hot and acrid in my lungs as I sat up with a start. The dim, flickering light of the chamber revealed scattered remnants of truth I'd uncovered and destroyed within the whispers of nightmares. My heart thundered like a war drum as I frantically scanned my surroundings. I was back in the cold stone room, surrounded by the sculptures of despair, their faces bearing a nuanced blend of agony and longing. Shadows thrashed against the walls, crawling ever closer, desperate to reunite with the essence they had lost. Yet one undeniable thing tugged at my consciousness, a crystal frame embedded in the wall that pulsated with a rhythmic glow, beckoning me like a siren from the depths that in that moment, I realized I was ensnared in a web woven by the very threads of fate I had once taken for granted. Clarity washed over me, but with it came the chilling knowledge that I had become part of the cycle. You seek your sister, yet here you are, seeker, where the past whispers and warps into monstrous truths, the figure from before rasped, emerging from the shadows, their voice layered with shadowy intent. You have awakened that which was meant to remain undisturbed, your name now intertwined with the fates of all who sought knowledge before you. No. I screamed, stumbling backward. I have to find her. I must save her. I rushed toward the crystal frame, drawn by the pulsating glow. It felt warm against my fingertips, feeding on my desperation. As I braced myself, shadows surged, wrapping around my legs, pulling, clawing. You belong to this place now, they hissed, their voices echoing off the cavernous walls, a collective cacophony that rose like a tide of agony. With resolve, I pressed my palm against the crystal, thrusting my will into the depths of the light. It flared brighter, illuminating the chamber in radiant clarity, revealing the history of those who had come before, including their participation in unmaking evil's grasp. But as I focused, something sinister flickered in the depths of that light, a truth not just of the lost but of my bloodline and its cursed connection to this dark realm. Visions flashed in my mind, figures draped in shadow, fingers delicately tracing the carvings that imbued the altar with life. But then it changed. A familiar sequence unspooled in front of me, and I stifled a horrified scream as I recognized the face among the shadows, my own, entwined with Maya's, screaming in endless loops of despair, ensnared as weary echoes of their legacy. You are not the hunter, you are the hunted, the figure chuckled cruelly, dark pleasure weaving through their tone. Forgotten yet present. You have awakened us all, seeker, and you shall face the price of knowledge. The walls shook violently as ancient spirits assailed me with their stories, uttering words that cut through the chamber, each one a blade, each story a life sacrificed to the insatiable hunger of darkness. You cannot escape the truth, for you have been chosen. The shadows surged with renewed fury, hungry for my essence. Panic seized me. No. I'm not part of this. I just wanted to find her. Please, I can't lose. But before I finished my plea, the shadows enveloped me entirely, whispering conspiracies, revelations that plunged deeper than I could fathom. Echoing voices echoed with knowledge that was never meant to be heard, forging connections that drew reality thin. That in desperation, I fought against their pull, reaching deeper into the radiant crystal, afraid of what else I might discover but unwilling to let go of the last thread that bound me to my sister. Maya. I screamed into the abyss of dark arms that tried to swallow me whole, a cry resonating with the passion of my love for her, and then I felt at the connection, a thin, fragile thread that vibrated through the darkness. I was tethered to her. I grasped that energy hungrily, and for an instant, the shadows recoiled as if struck during a tempest. You cannot hold on forever. They shrilled, their voices betraying the fear that lay behind their insatiable hunger, but the pull of my love surged. Stronger, a radiant warmth bursting free as I tapped into the essence of hope intertwined within the spark of the crystal. I will bring her back. I shouted defiantly, feeling a surge within that I couldn't hold back. The shadowed wails grew louder, thrashing in wild desperation as the figure receded further into the swirling void, their smugness fading as I began to spiral through an expanse of light. The world shifted. The shadows morphed into forms of memory, a dance of fractured timelines, the stories of those lost merging with my own. Threads intertwined, weaving a tapestry that stretched beyond the reaches of time itself, forming an eternal bond. With each heartbeat, each connection, I felt clarity, and in that moment, I saw her, Maya, reaching across dimensions, her face beautiful and tormented, searching, yearning. Don't leave me. She implored. I'm coming. I bellowed, thrashing against the pull, fighting against the darkness that screamed at me to return. The radiant glow intensified again, and the shadows shrieked in protest as I grasped the brightness of memories, the love wrapped in threads of light, and wrenched free. You think you will escape? The figure shrieked. You will join us. Join us in oblivion. But I was no longer afraid. The light erupted outward, shattering my bindings as the chamber exploded around me, a tumult of memories flooding my senses. I was engulfed in her warmth, her laughter mixing with the cries of anguish around me, a triumphant harmony battling the despair. And again, darkness threatened to close in, but now I was not alone. With a blaring cacophony of those who had come before, the light surged once more, pulling me and Maya free from the grasp of the shadows. As we stumbled from the clutches of that haunted place, trembling and disoriented, we gasped for breath together, standing in the remnants of an ancient hall, where spectral forms faded back to darkness. The room was quiet now, devoid of the chaos we experienced just moments ago. Yet the quiet echoed within me, and I could feel a truth buried deep in my blood. My fingers brushed against the manuscript lying abandoned on the floor, the final chapter of its tale still unwritten, still waiting to claim another soul. But not mine, I whispered, understanding the power of knowledge and the weight of its truth. Our legacy intertwined forever, but I would be the difference. Looking at Maya, I could see the relief mirrored in her eyes. She gripped my hand tightly. We're free. We broke it. But the lingering shadows coiled within, a dark promise echoing in the corners of my mind. And as I turned to leave, one bone-chilling whisper resonated through the cold air, curling around me like a shroud, "You will return, little seeker. You have only just begun to understand the darkness that clings to your soul." And as the door creaked shut behind us, I felt their eyes watching, waiting. The price for knowledge may have been paid, but it was only the beginning of the eternal dance. The shadows lingered, after all, and a new darkness awaited.